Okay, just a reminder for everybody, we are now streaming live to YouTube. So everything you see or hear will be there on our YouTube channel. It'll be live while we're here, and then it'll take a couple hours after we finish up for it to get published to YouTube permanently, just so you know. Jenna, I'm going to transfer host over to you now so that you can explain the meeting format and let everybody know how things are going to go.
Sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Havel.
Yep.
Get my ducks in a row here. All right. Can everybody hear me all right? Looks like we have some participants and some panelists, and it's 3 o'clock. So let's go ahead and get started. So let me do the slideshow here. So welcome everyone. We are here today to talk a little bit about the Nehalem Bay State Park conditional use master plan and just the overall project and how we got here today. Thanks for tuning in. And as mentioned, this will be recorded and then posted again on YouTube on the link that you all have, I believe. So just to kick things off, we'll do some introductions of each of the staff members on the call. And then we'll set some groundwork and share the agenda for the meeting. So I'm Jenna Marmon. I'm the planning and design lead, and I'll pass it to Justin.
Good afternoon, Justin Parker. I'm the North Coast District Manager for OPRD.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tracy Johnson. I'm the project manager for the Nehalem Bay project.
And my name is Ben Cox. I'm the OPRD park manager for Nehalem Bay Management.
Great. So just to share what our goals are today as far as an agenda, and we'll try to stick to it. We're going to, again, just try to welcome and some introductions. I'm going to give a really brief overview of OPRD master planning and touch on the 2009 Nehalem Bay State Park master plan. Justin's going to share a little bit about the park, the current status, and how we got to the project list that we have currently. And then Tracy's going to share some more details about the county conditional use master plan and the proposed project overview. And then we're hoping to leave the majority of the meeting, or at least half, about 30 minutes for Q&A and discussion. And just so everyone knows, you can participate by clicking on the reactions button and raising your hand, or also typing your question into the Q&A. I think it'd be best if we hold those till the end so we can get through the baseline, just in case your questions are actually about something we're going to cover. But if you do have something that's really quick and clarifying, feel free to raise your hand. We will monitor that, or again, drop your question in the Q&A. So just a little bit about what master planning is for OPRD. It's our process from state parks to develop a vision for a park. It's aspirational, and we also are balancing aspiration with pragmatism, is what I like to say, because we also set this expectation from the public that we're going to do all these great things that are in the master plan that they've been working on and commenting on for usually about a 2-year process. It's about a 20-year planning horizon. Many of our master plans, though, are older than 20 years, and also many of our master plans unfortunately are non-existent. We do have several parks without master plans. It includes robust public and partner outreach and engagement. And then once it's complete, we work with the local land use authority to make sure that they don't have any significant issues with our master plan, and then we adopt it into rule, into Oregon administrative rule. And a really important note is that the master plan does not preclude us from doing anything regarding permitting and land use. So even if a project's in the master plan, we still need to go through the land use process. So just a little bit about the Nehalem Bay State Park master plan that was completed in 2009. Well, first and foremost, there's only a couple of staff who were involved in that process who are still around. One is a GIS technician and the other is a botanist. So we don't necessarily know exactly all the details of how we got to the projects in the master plan and some of the commitments in the master plan. But we do know what the focus areas were, and that was to meet the growing demand on the North Coast. It mentions that visitors are often turned away. We still have that today. And we wanted to diversify the camping experience, which you can see by the broad, diverse range of camping proposals including yurts, cabins, equine, tents, groups, hiker-biker, hiking, flying, paddling. And also of note, it was on the heels of recently completed interpretive plan, which recognized this area's potential to be a hub for interpretation for the area's rich natural and cultural history. So with that, Justin's going to talk a little bit about where we are.
Thanks, Jenna. So, as was mentioned, Nehalem Bay is a busy state park with strong demand for occupancy, and it still has somewhat of an off season. And when the weather turns, this project really is about trying to keep the park in good repair. A lot of the infrastructure to the park is original to the construction and is in need of a life cycle replacement. We have the good fortune of having general obligation bonds entrusted to us by the legislature to help with this project, and we're trying to be good stewards of that money. Really, it's about rehabbing, as I said, the existing park infrastructure, and it's been described as a rip and replace, basically for existing utilities, think water, sewer, electric, and existing campsites primarily that have reached the end of their service life, and we're trying to be prepared for demand in the future, and so this project's very helpful. And then not all of these, the items in the Park Master Plan or in the conditional use are funded. Currently, there is no capacity adding projects currently funded. And we're trying to be good stewards of natural resources such as water and the land and electricity, and being mindful of the park's demands on local utilities. And so we're trying to, a key portion of this project is to, where we can, increase efficiency, reduce waste, and be good stewards of the environment. The actual project list is still in a way to be determined based on how we think we know what we might see the projects come in at, but the projects have not gone out to bid yet. So there is some variability there in what we actually can do. On the slide on your screen, you're going to see a long list of proposed projects. Not all, as I mentioned, not all of those are funded at this time. We'll get more in depth into that.
So I was going to talk a little bit about how our master plan that we developed previously in 2009 dovetails with the county's conditional use master plan. So the conditional use master plan is a process that the county uses to review and approve a plan of development for the future. It's not for an immediate development necessarily. It's an approval for a 10-year window. And that allows us to go through one process with a number of projects and get them all approved at one time. And then after that, as budget becomes available or as we advance projects through the permitting process, we can move forward with them as possible. So the initial conditional use application is what's before the County Planning Commission later this week. The Planning Commission includes a hearing. We'll be having the public hearing. That's not always a required step, but it is often something that happens, and it's something that we'll be doing for this project. The Planning Commission would then approve the application, and the County Community Development Department would approve it, and then we would have that 10-year approval to move forward with projects. At that point, we would still have to go through a more advanced design process for any project that we're going to move forward with, and we would be going through the standard county development permits. Also, if there were any environmental permits or other jurisdictional requirements, we would have to go through all of the standard permitting even once this conditional use master plan is approved. Sort of our master plan is the first step, And then this step with the county, the land use approval, is the second step, and then we would advance the project from there. Go ahead, next slide, please. So this is an overview of the projects that we have included in our application at this point. This correlates with the list that Justin had on the screen a little while ago. The white projects, or the projects that are labeled in the white boxes, are projects that are allowed uses. So that generally these are projects that are replacing existing utilities, supporting existing users. Like, we're adding a new restroom between the C and D loops. Right now we have camping in C and D loops, but neither of them have a restroom. And so the campers from those two loops have to travel greater distance than we usually would prefer to get to a restroom shower building. So we're adding one single new restroom to help serve both of those loops. So those are the kinds of things. We're not adding campers. We're just helping them have an easier time getting to the bathroom. Other things are existing entry road from the Gary Street entrance down to the intersection at the airport. We are proposing to repave that road, restripe it, repair some alligatoring and some sinkholes that are developing along that. And we're also planning to add speed humps to help control traffic speeds on that section of road. Staff cabins is another project that we've been working on because, as I'm sure everybody here knows, housing and workforce housing in particular is a huge issue on the North Oregon coast. And so helping us keep operational is, one of the steps is to add staff housing so that we can have enough employees to keep ourselves running. Additional things that we're proposing are boat ramp parking lot improvements. So that includes existing boat ramp parking lot, which needs to be repaved and repaired, and potentially repairing the existing boat ramp into the water. And then the second step of what you can see on the screen are the things that are in the yellow boxes. The yellow boxes are the things that are the actual conditional uses. They are allowed within the zone, which is our zone in this case is the recreation management zone. They are allowed in our zone, but they need consideration by the community development department. And so that's really a lot of what's in the application, is talking about proposed projects and how they align with the goals of the recreation management zone. Okay, Jenna, go ahead. Another way to look at this list is, this is an excerpt of, or an adaptation of one of the tables in our application. So you can see this is our list of proposed projects. The top portion of the list in white are allowed uses that are identified in the recreation management zone as things that we can do without having land use approval. The blue items are allowed uses, but there are a couple of caveats with them. The boat ramp repairs and the future Oregon Coast Trail connection, both of those are much larger projects with much more significant multi-jurisdictional coordination, where we'll have to coordinate with other permitting agencies, other landowners. They're longer, much more involved projects. All three of those things that are highlighted in blue are currently below, they're currently unfunded, or we're anticipating that they're unfunded. So they are high priority projects for us, but we haven't identified funding to fully execute those projects at this point. And then the bottom portion of this list is the conditional uses that we're basically applying for with this application. Those include several projects that were identified in the 2009 master plan, and we're hoping to keep those on the table for the next 10 years to advance some or all of them as funding becomes available. And I'll show you a map that shows a little bit more information about this. So this is sort of a markup of our master plan from 2009. And this is just we're using this to sort of show you how things are changing, because I think the older master plan, what happened when we started to look at our list of projects, we prioritized our needs and we cross-referenced it with the master plan that was developed previously in 2009. But what we realized was, this kind of circles back to what Jenna was saying about aspirational. This master plan at this time, they aspired to add a cabin village out in, frankly, the middle of nowhere in the park. So that's pretty aspirational. There are no utilities in that location. We do not have a road up to that point of the park, and it's very far removed from all the rest of the camping and central, use facilities within the park. So that's, in 2009, that probably seemed like a good idea, but today that's just not how we're managing this park and not something that we would pursue. And so we looked at relocating that cabin area down into the center of the park, adjacent to the proposed camp loop. And that also coincides with some of the use patterns we see in a lot of our parks. These days, people often come, multi-generational families come on camping trips. They like to have a cabin for some of the family members and maybe nearby RV sites or tent sites for other family members. So cabins and camping in proximity to each other are actually a popular amenity. Another element that you can see, so the red circle, I can't point because I don't have control of the screen, but Jenna can maybe point. The red circle at the top of the screen is where the cabins were proposed, and then the arrow kind of takes you to the green location where they're approximately proposed in the CUMP that we've submitted to the county. Another element that we've adjusted the location of from the 2009 master plan to our CUMP is the yurt loop. So the yurt loop was located on the top of the dune at the end of the airstrip. That location is problematic because the airstrip safety zone, the approach safety zone, has been substantially expanded since this master plan was completed. And we met with Oregon Aviation, and they are not interested in having people occupying a hilltop that's directly in the airstrip approach. So the location for that needed to shift. Also related to that, as an agency, we're moving away from yurts in our coastal campgrounds because they tend to require a lot more maintenance and they just don't have great longevity. They're very popular, but they also require a lot of maintenance and they tend to get musty and then we get complaints. So we're moving from yurts to cabins where possible. And so we're making a couple of changes from what we had originally proposed, both in location and the type of unit. Generally, the camping experience is the same. It's just a little bit of a structure that's a little bit easier to maintain. Another change from the master plan is the location of the dump station. So the existing dump station is actually down where, in the vicinity of the green circle. The proposed dump station location in 2009 was to move it up into the center of the park. This is, again, not a location that has utilities. The sewer and water both come into the park from Nakarni Boulevard on the kind of northwest corner of the park. And so line extension to get those utilities to this location is pretty cost prohibitive. However, our existing dump station is pretty old, and it also is kind of it's a difficult circulation pattern because campers that are leaving the camp loops actually have to do a 360-degree loop. They drive past it on their way out of the campground, loop around through, and then have to turn left. They turn left into it and then left back out into the stream of traffic to leave the campground. And so our proposed adjustment to that is if and when we need to replace that dump station, we would like to reorganize it so that it's accessible in the outbound north travel direction. So it would be probably, instead of being on the west side of the exit drive, it would be on the east side of the exit drive. So drivers traveling north with their campers could pull in, dump, and then proceed to leave the campground. Those are the primary changes from the master plan to now. And I think it's important just to realize we're not proposing duplication. So in most cases where we had shown something in the master plan, we're proposing an alternate location in the conditional use master plan. Those things would be replacing what was the prior location with a new location that's more feasible for to achieve our goals for development. I believe that might actually be the last slide. So I think now we are able to open it up for questions or discussion if there are any.
Yes, so if you have questions or want to make a comment, please raise your hand. I will recognize you and unmute you, and you can speak and talk to the panelists, and then we'll try to give everybody a fair shot here.
And I stopped sharing, but I'm happy to go back to the map or anything that folks would like to have a closer look at. And we're also happy to share this presentation, the actual presentation, if folks want to look closer.
So Regina has typed a comment in Q&A that says the 2009 plan called for expanding the fly-in sites. What's the status of that proposal?
The 2009 master plan, the concepts that are in there that are not included in our conditional use master plan, they continue to live in our master plan as a future aspirational goal. However, they are not included in this conditional use application and are unlikely to proceed on the 10-year horizon. If we were to decide to move forward with those at some point in the future, we would presumably the county would require us to go through another land use process to get approval to move forward with design and development on those. But they're not currently on our list of priority projects.
So once again, in case anybody doesn't know in the Zoom application how to raise your hand to be recognized, on the bottom of the screen, there's a reactions button. If you click that, a little window pops up, and then there's a raise hand button that you can click on in order to be recognized.
Looks like we have a question. How will projects be funded?
Stand by.
Are you muted?
I am. Could you unmute me, Ben?
I'm sorry.
Unmute me.
You're live now.
Okay, thank you. Something happened to my Zoom window. I don't know. Sorry, operator error as usual. So how are projects going to be funded? So Oregon Parks and Recreation Department has a couple different funding sources that we use to develop projects. Currently, we have what's called a general obligation bond or a GO bond that was granted to us by the legislature. And so that was a large pot of money for us. It was $50 million, but it was divided between about 10 or so different park sites. So luckily for us, Nehalem was one of those sites. So we have a significant chunk of dedicated funding to help pay for the projects that were on the funded portion of our list. So those are the utility improvements to replace and upgrade utilities that were built in the 60s and 70s, the addition of the new restroom at the C&D loop, the paving of the road, and things like that. Other sources of funding we have that will help pay for our current project list. We also get some money from ODOT to help pay for paving. So that'll pay for another portion of the road improvements. And then we also have internal capital money that we everybody at State Parks has a budget that we put together where we've identified projects and the funding that will be, and we allocate our capital improvement funding between a variety of projects. And so that also helps pay for a portion of all of these projects. In addition to that, sometimes we pursue grants to help fund our projects. We don't have any grants currently as part of the package of projects that we're moving forward with right now, but we have discussed the possibility of pursuing an Oregon Marine Board grant to help pay for some of the improvements associated with the boat ramp. And the boat ramp is, of the projects that are in the conditional use application, the boat ramp improvements are our highest priority because the existing boat ramp parking lot is in really poor condition, and it's also the way that it's designed, it's very difficult for boat trailers to navigate easily within that parking lot. And so we've been referring to the new parking area as the overflow parking lot, but really we're hoping to repurpose the existing parking lot to be more of single family vehicles, kayak launches, things like that, and move the boat trailer parking to the adjacent parking lot, which will just be a little bit larger and easier to maneuver for those larger, longer vehicles with trailers.
Okay, Paul has a question, and I believe I unmuted you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I live right behind Dump Road, and I've been here for about 10 years. And, you know, since they built up the Highlands now and Bayside Gardens and other areas, basically, and if you look at the 2009 master plan, they said Nacarney Road was already overused at that point. I've seen people run right through that stop sign. I've seen people in my backyard getting away from the cars, trying to get out of the park. I talked to people at the recycling center just the other day who I've known for years, and they said, yeah, we get a couple hundred cars a day. They're talking about part of the master plan was bringing in people off Laneda down Classic Road, which is 20 miles an hour, and we're at 35 miles an hour, which people go 40, 45 because there's a hill coming up to the park on the west end. And so they don't know there's a stop sign there. They also air brake on the way down. So what I'm saying is that the traffic has increased exponentially. You've got more homes, you're proposing to put more people in the park, and there's no improvements. And you're talking about also a west side entrance. That west side entrance is mostly deer and other stuff around there. The road's about 15 foot wide, and it's mostly used by local people. So everybody's going to come through that main entrance, and you've got a construction site right before the recycling center. You got the recycling center, and then a couple of 100 feet, you have the entrance to the park. So my question is, instead of turning it into 101, what plans do we have? And also, too, as an avid biker, I've seen people almost get hit a few times on the Kearney Road. It's the only road that's 35 miles an hour, and as you know, people don't do 35. That's a big concern to us right now.
Thanks, Paul. So I'm willing to field that question, and it looks like Regina also dropped a question in the Q&A. So I'm going to read that now. Also, the 2009 plan said Nacarney City Road is inadequate for its uses then. It's only worse now. Can we discuss the need for safer approaches, slower traffic, speed bumps, and/or pedestrian and bike lane? So we have become aware of the written elements of the of the 2009 master plan that committed us, where we committed ourselves to partnering with the local county and city on the transportation system. In the master plan, it talks about inadequate, but it doesn't really say anything specifically other than the pedestrian and bicycle element. So we're not really clear on whether it was a pavement issue, a capacity issue, or another issue that was determined to be inadequate. And then just recently in 2003, there was a Nehalem Bay Transportation System Plan that was adopted through, I believe, the communities, including the 3 cities in the county, that identified some of the proposed projects for the transportation system plan. And those projects, there are only pedestrian and bike elements of those projects. So they're only a separated trail proposal, a connection to 101, some improvements to the local roadways, etc. So as part of this project, one of the things that we did was communicate with both ODOT and the county about their concerns. And when we talk to them, the proposals that we have in this conditional use master plan for the 50 campsites and the 10 cabins, I believe it's 10, Tracy, is that right? 10 cabins.
We have 10 cabins in one location and 14 in another, which were correlate with the yurt and the cabin loop from the prior. It's a little bit less than what was in the original master plan.
Okay, so between those 2 projects, the capacity that those 2 projects were determined to add to the system was not significant enough per ODOT or per the county to raise any concerns from either their road authorities or their traffic engineers. So we are committed to paving the road in our own park, and we also have made some improvements since 2009, including a soft surface path connection around the perimeter of the park, as well as improvements to the path system within the park. But at this time, there are no major transportation system projects that are coming as part of this project. Let me see, so I think that address the plans that we have. We're more than willing to work with the city and county on projects that they want to propose where we can partner. We're looking at the Oregon Coast Trail connection, which would help alleviate some of the pedestrian and bicycle concerns. But the other roadways that are outside of the park are not ours to manage and not ours to actually promote projects on. So I hope that helps answer some of those questions.
Okay, so the next question in the Q&A is from Mike, and he asks, who has zoning authority?
I'm not sure I exactly understand the question. I mean, the county establishes the zone, the zoning map for every parcel in the county. Our current zone is recreation management, which is the common zone for a park or a campground. We also have several overlay zones. We have a beach and dune hazard overlay zone, estuary natural overlay zone for the frontage along Nehalem Bay. And a couple of the county has, various overlay zones that are protecting, sort of identifying special resources and protecting them.
Okay, and if there are follow-up questions or you need clarification, again, you can drop one in the Q&A, and once again, you can raise your hand and ask to speak if that helps you more. So Regina asks, once the plan is approved, when does construction actually start?
So there are two different things here. I think it's really important to separate the allowed uses from the conditional uses. Currently, we do have a plan to go out to bid for the allowed uses later this summer, with construction starting in the fall. So the allowed uses, again, are the utility improvements, the additional restrooms, our entry road repaving project, and some other assorted things at the park. The park will be closed for a period of time while that work is done, and then will be reopened with improved facilities to support the park users that we currently accommodate. The conditional use master plan is for projects that are on the 3 to 5 or more year horizon as far as development. So the most likely near-term project would be projects associated with the boat ramp, and that will really be the progress on those projects will be dependent on how our budgets are when we go out to bid on the near-term projects. And once we have a better idea of where we are funding and budget-wise, we'll determine if we can move forward with design and permitting for the boat ramp improvements. If we can, I estimate that project would take at least 3, if not more years, 3 to 5 years for any improvements that would actually touch the water in the estuary because of the natural resources permitting that would be associated with that. If we just were to repave the existing parking lot and build the new parking lot, that might be more of a 3-year, 2.5 to 3 year project to get that accomplished. Everything else beyond that doesn't have a funding source identified and might move forward within the 10-year window of approval for this conditional use master plan, but there's no guarantees at this point. We had to go through the land use application. I should just say, we knew when we reviewed the projects that were on our priority list and we talked to the county, we realized that a number of things were going to require us to go through the conditional use master plan process. And so we're aspirational. We didn't want to go through this process with just one little project. We figured we might as well have a plan on books with the county that included several things that we could pursue in the next 10 years, and then we'll pick them up and move them forward if we if we identify funding in the future.
Another question from the Q&A, Mike asks, how will visitors to park be managed during a tsunami? And I can take a little bit of that. So we've worked with Dogami, the Department of Geology and Mineral Industries, on a lot of mapping. So Dogami has developed inundation zones and proposed dry spots during different levels of earthquake and tsunami events. And using those data, we created some tsunami evacuation trails that didn't previously exist, trying to get people a shot at keeping their feet dry and staying alive. It's tough on the Nehalem Spit just because of where it is and the distance from the south end of the campground to any sort of high ground. But it is something that we've been actively working on and have added some infrastructure to address. And I'll let anybody else, any other panelists, weigh in if they wish. Okay, Brian asks, will there be a public oversight committee formed with local city and county local residents for planned construction projects?
Jenna, do you want to take this one or do you want me to take it?
I guess, Brian, could you clarify how that could, my initial answer is no, but I also would like to hear from you what your thoughts would be on what that committee would do exactly. And just recognizing too that these projects, these construction projects, the vast majority of them that are funded are utilities and upgrades and updates and projects that don't have a lot of wiggle room as far as input. So I'm just curious what your goals are there.
Well, I'm a local resident in Pine Ridge, just south and east of the park. I am in the construction industry, so I'm more interested in seeing what kind of committees, not so much for the utility work, but for the other projects, just to create a mechanism for, I think, a little more proactive community communication, because between the city and the county, because we all ride the same lines, right? Knee Kearney Road is county. You have Laneda, which is city. And I think there's a lot more moving parts here that need to have a voice into that, whether it's not really an oversight committee, maybe that's the wrong term, but a collaborative group that has input to scheduling, phasing, understanding. I'm concerned about what you said, that the park will be closed for the utility upgrades. Not sure that that's really a great thing for our recreational, income for the economy here. So I am concerned about that, but I'm also more concerned about just getting communication out to the parties locally.
So I'll take the first stab and then I'm going to pass it to Justin. But I think, we realized when we submitted this conditional use application and you guys had questions, Regina raised questions and started posting things online. We realized that there was, we didn't realize that there was a lack of understanding of the projects that we had proposed. We have had websites up about the GO bond. We have been in communication with the county commissioners. We've met with the county community development, public works, ODOT, the city of Manzanita, Nehalem Bay Fire and Rescue, Nehalem Bay Wastewater. So we have actually been coordinating. Who we didn't coordinate with was the neighbors, which is you guys. So we apologize for that. But we have been actively coordinating with everybody else we could think of related to these projects to make sure that we were crossing our T's and dotting our I's. So that probably doesn't, calm your concerns entirely, but I want you to realize that we have done all of the communication that we thought we needed to do, and a few that we were asked to do by the county in addition, so that we were covering all of the bases. And I know specifically, I mean, the county commissioners are fully aware that this campground is going to be taken offline for an extended period of time, along with a number of other projects. There's just, from a public safety perspective, there's no way to do the work that we need to do and have the campground or the park be open. It's just not feasible. So we have strategies in place to try and consolidate the work and get it done as quickly, as efficiently as possible. But it is what it is. We're spending $10 million in improvements here, and it's a big effort, and the fastest way to get it done is to focus and do it and get it done. Justin, if you have anything to add, you're the one who talks to the commissioner, so I'll let you.
Justin, you're muted.
All right, how about now? So, Brian, thanks for the question. I think that while the construction project design, which was primarily for the utilities and the restroom, is at like approaching 100%, completion for the design, and it's ready to go to bid. I think we can commit, if there's a desire for the community to come out and have some more input. I think that's for things that can be modified. I think that's good. I think having a cup of coffee and sitting down and talking about some of the issues as far as the closure, being proactive in terms of the sequencing of the project or suggestions the community may have for how some of the pieces might fit together from the community perspective. I think I'd be happy to have some discussions with that. I think we could maybe set up some other meetings, whether in person or virtual, just to kind of hear some more feedback. There's some of the closures of the park is related to safety, as I'm sure we all have our different definitions of safety and what's acceptable risk, but we've given the heavy truck traffic and the safety of bike ped in the camp loops, we've felt that the closure needs to happen for the minimum amount of time necessary. We've also been reaching out to the county commissioners and the tourism folks about potential dip in lodging tax money, TLT money, and they're aware of that and are making plans accordingly. So maybe we can talk more offline about your suggestions. I can give you my cell phone number if you want to take that down, or I can put it in the chat, and then we can talk some more about suggestions. How about that? I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, so I see some questions coming up in the Q&A, and then they must be getting answered in the Q&A because they disappear from the open questions. So the next open question we have here is from Paul, and Paul asks, what about the fire risk with increased usage? 20% of the trees are dead because of no root system on the sand dunes. People start most fires. Increased use means higher risk. The strong winds would burn through the area quickly.
So we have had our primary, and Ben, you probably could start the answer to this question about our fire protection, but we have fire protection from ODF and also from Nehalem Bay Fire and Rescue. And as part of the utility upgrade project, we are going to be adding 3 service hydrants within the park to help with fire protection. The water system within the park, we will be replacing the majority of it, so it allows us to add these hydrants that will help. That was at the request of the fire department. It's not required, but it was something they suggested to help with fire management. And I guess the other piece about that is that in the future, we don't have the flow rate on our hydrants that is required for buildings of the type that would be constructed for the cabins. And so at the time, if we were to ever move forward with construction of the cabins, we would need to come up with a solution for fire protection for those. And that would be the most likely scenarios for that would be either providing sprinkler systems within those cabins or providing underground storage tank or a storage tank with a pump system that could be a reservoir to support fire suppression. That's something that we've also discussed with both the Public Works Director in the city of Manzanita and with Frank at the fire department. So at this point, we aren't proposing to build those structures, so we don't have to identify, but Frank did submit a letter that was a supplement to the staff report that identified that he's aware of the current proposed projects and doesn't have any concerns, but that in the future we would need to coordinate with the building official at the time of building permits for fire protection on those new structures. And I did want to say, Ben, to your question, so Regina posted a question clarifying the funding and I answered it. So that's why that one went away. She asked a question about the GO bonds and the 3-year spend window. And so we received the GO bonds in 2 installments. We have until the end, until June of 2026 to spend the money. The money that's been allocated for Nehalem is scheduled to be spent between fall of 2024 this year and spring or early summer of 2025 next year. So we're expecting a 9 to 10 month construction window, and we will spend our GO bond allotment in that period of time before the GO bond money expires.
Thanks for that, Tracy. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how the YouTube recording works, and I didn't think that people could see some of these questions that have been asked and answered. So I thought that was important. There was one other one here from Regina that Jenna answered, which says, all of the above are concerns about the road. Read the winter 2022 online open house summary of the Nehalem Bay TSP, found here for details about concerns. Read here, excuse me. She posts a link, and then Jenna responded, thanks, Regina, we'll have a look. Note that any proposed projects would need to be listed in the TSP and led by the road authority, either the city or the county. So that one was also answered in the Q&A. There's one more open question, and it's a comment from Mike. And Mike says, I support more community discussion. And then I had one more point about trees and fire. So we have a very active hazard tree program. We've removed, I got here in 2016 to manage the unit. And in just Nehalem Bay State Park, we've removed hundreds of dead standing trees. We've had to remove live trees too because they were a hazard of some form. And we're a little late to the game, but we started back planting some trees. So we are trying to manage that both for fuel load and then also just for forest health.
Thanks, Ben. I did reshare my screen with all of our contact emails. Feel free to reach out. I hope everyone is seeing it. Let me know if not. Raise your hand or type a question in the chat.
So we have another question in the Q&A from Regina. If Nakarni City / Gary Road needs revisions, is that City of Nehalem or Manzanita or whom?
I believe the jurisdiction is identified in the transportation system plan. Nakarni City Boulevard or Nakarni City Road is a county road. I believe the portion of Gary that is north of our entrance might be City of Manzanita, but other portions of it are, it's a little confusing because the network kind of fits and starts. Most of the frontage roads are county, but some of them are City of Manzanita. We don't have any City of Nehalem roads that are, were in that TSP. And there were no connections directly from the Nehalem roads, I don't believe.
Thanks, JC. Any other questions?
I see Paul has a hand up. Hold on just a second. Okay, Paul. You might have to hit unmute on your
Mute. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. With the increase of the population, and I'm not trying to beat a dead horse here, with the Highlands, with the increase in Bayside Gardens, with the other subdivisions, with the increase now in the usage of the sanitary, the transfer station, and you guys only being 200 feet away, we're stuck between a rock and a hard place, because you throw your hands up and say, well, hey, we're dealing with the park. And then yet we've got a construction site, a recycling site, an increased population coming in. Everybody's kind of like, well, that's not our problem. And I guess we're trying to ask you guys, what do we do? I mean, we're seeing a huge increase. And also, I'm telling you, I've been bike riding for 25, 30 years. And when I see people come down that road, it gives me the shivers. And you've got, the park is mostly designed for RVs. And those things are 40-foot long, towing a 15-foot boat. And you got cars coming in both directions. You got cement trucks coming out of the recycling place and other stuff. And it just seems everybody's kind of throwing their hands up saying, well, I'm sorry, I'm 200 feet away. I can't deal with it. Or that's really not my problem. And really, I guess what we're asking is your help. That's all I have.
I will just say, Paul, I understand your concerns. I'm a Tillamook County resident, and these concerns are shared throughout the communities and throughout the county. We, at the time of our 2009 master plan, we committed to be party to the conversation and to help where we could. The county has not approached us and asked us to do anything. They did not ask us to join the recent TSP project that was associated with land around our park. And so we're working with the information we have available, but usually it's usually the jurisdiction that owns the road that's responsible for spearheading the projects. And the projects that were identified in that transportation system plan, they were all identified as priorities, and they also were identified as long-range projects because they are multi-jurisdictional, multiple landowners, highly complicated, highly expensive. They're not slam dunk projects. So I I understand where you're coming from, but I think there is some reality in what's said in the transportation system plan about the long range nature of the projects that are proposed. We did try to pick up, our proposed projects include a couple that are a little bit more within our wheelhouse, which are the Oregon Coast Trail and our entry road, some improvements to our entry road. Those are, the Oregon Coast Trail project, though, is still quite complex with multiple landowners, multiple jurisdictions. Those projects take years to achieve, even with a champion leading charge.
Well, this is Justin. I hear what you're saying. My email was on that slide. Maybe we can have an email exchange and continue the conversation and start talking a little bit about maybe there's something on the edges of this that we can, find some sort of solutions. I get it. I grew up in the area myself. I'm familiar with it. I feel like it's not an excuse, not offered as an excuse, but a reality of funding and jurisdiction, but advocacy and conversations can always happen. So let's have a conversation. If you're willing to email me and share your email, I'll engage with you. Okay.
So in the Q&A, Regina says, I also support more community involvement in this development. Coordinating all the various players is a significant challenge, and we have a vested interest in keeping the area beautiful and safe.
So does anyone have a suggestion for the type of community engagement they'd like to see? Is it more meetings like this? Is it a tour of the park? What might be happening, looking at things on the ground? Is it, what are some, if anyone has any specific or more specific ideas?
While we perhaps await somebody to make a suggestion there, Regina does have another comment in the Q&A, and she says to improve the entry road beyond Necarny without improving Necarny itself is a bit of a poke in the eye with a sharp stick. I've watched children on one wheels being followed by multiple vehicles as they cruise down the road out of the park onto Necarny. It's scary.
I will just say that, Regina, the proposed improvements on our entry road do not align with the proposed improvements on Necarny City Boulevard. As you probably are aware, the entry road into our park is constrained by wetlands on both sides. It's basically a fill of the road is placed on fill through the center of the wetland, and so we're pretty constrained. But we're doing what we can. We discussed extensively our options for improvement of that road, and the things that we're doing at this point are we are removing the deteriorated pavement. We're going to over excavate the soft areas and repave. We're planning on adding speed humps along the north half of the road down to where the airport intersection is to help slow down traffic in that area. And we've also discussed adding, and I blank on the word, but we've discussed adding the speed radar sign so that people can see the speed that they're going to help encourage people to slow down. So we are not adding a bike lane at this time, and we are not adding, a separated path because of the wetlands that are adjacent to the road. So it's not, we are working on improving it, but it's not going to be like a poke in the eye, because it's not going to be 36 feet wide or anything like that, like you might hope.
So Mike comments, a public meeting in Manzanita with Tillamook County Commissioners and a Manzanita City Council. I believe he probably meant to say Manzanita City Council member, or maybe the entire City Council. That's Mike's comment, I believe, in answer to Justin's question.
Thank you, Mike.
Go ahead, Justin, and then Regina has her hand up.
Just going to say thank you, Mike, for that suggestion. That's noted. We'll see what we can set up.
All right, Regina, you'll have to unmute.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to do this. My understanding, Tracy, is that the road is going to be widened inside the park. So none of that additional width can be set aside for a route, I mean, at least a pedestrian walkway.
Sorry, the plans for that have changed.
Oh.
So, the land use application included a proposed widening of the road, but we have since had to step away from that due to the funding and the permitting constraints. And so we are moving forward with repaving our existing width, but adding some traffic calming measures to try to reduce travel speeds.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry about that. I
No,
forgot about that clarification. I appreciate you bringing it up.
So Brian in the Q&A says, it sounds like we need parks to join us residents as an advocate to the city transportation and planning departments in pushing safety of all, including park users.
All right, well, I just want to make sure that everybody got a chance to get our contact information. I'm going to share my screen one last time. Hopefully everyone can see it all right. We are approaching time, unless, oh, we have one more. We have a thumbs up for Brian's comment. Unless we have any other pressing questions. And again, I think we're all happy to talk more about planning, transportation, all of those things, respecting our roles and our our constraints as an agency and working with our partners. We hear you that you would like us to engage more with the city and county on the transportation issues. So
Mike does have a comment, and he just says that he agrees with Brian. So the recently completed transportation system plan, I believe that was probably intended to get those people that Brian talks about in the room to talk about transportation challenges and some of the things that are happening here. As was stated earlier, I'm not sure who said, but we OPRD weren't invited to that conversation. I'm not sure how. I didn't hear about it. I'm not throwing shade on anybody. I'm not sure how public it was and how many people were made aware of it, but it seemed like that would have been a good time to do a lot of this. I was surprised by it when I learned it.
they did graciously identify a couple of projects within our park boundaries for us to do. So definitely would have been nice to be engaged. All right. Well, it's for everyone. We again appreciate everybody tuning in online. Do follow up if you have any further questions, and otherwise we look forward to talking with you in the future about more transportation issues or through the land use planning conditional use master plan application. But we very much appreciate your time and everyone's comments and hearing from all of you and your thoughts. So with no further ado, I will end the meeting.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.